30 palace maids. Every day, they must cast a stone into the well. At the bottom lies the deposed empress. And every time they throw one, the lead matron says the same thing. Anyone who dares to pick a small one will be thrown down there themselves tonight. Because of this, everyone scrambles for the largest stones. Only I pick up the smallest one every time, and drop it in with an expressionless face. But as the days pass by, the stones we throw into the well pile up higher and higher. The well water has long since been absorbed, and a tall mountain of stone has risen inside. And yet, I never see any sign of the so-called deposed empress. When I return to my quarters, this time, the rations are still two dry, hard, black flour buns. This is our food for the entire day. The maid in my room opens her mouth, struggling to swallow it as if chewing on tree bark. I look at the bun in my hand, but I have no appetite. My mind is filled with thoughts of that well. That night, I had a dream. I dreamed I fell into that very well. Cold stones surrounded me on all sides. Darkness submerged me like a rising tide. I cried out in despair, but no sound came out. One last giant boulder fell, and everything went black. When I woke up startled from the dream, I was drenched in a cold sweat. I touched my arms and legs. They were intact. But the agonizing pain of being crushed by stones seemed to linger in the marrow of my bones. I couldn't fall back asleep. Looking at the waning moon outside the window, I made the most daring decision of my life. The next day, I went to throw stones as usual. Then, I took the 2 buns I was given for the night, and secretly hid them in my clothes. I listened to the rumbling of my empty stomach, but I felt a strange sense of peace. The same thing happened over the next 2 days. I managed to save a total of 6 buns. On the 3rd night, I made sure everyone else was sound asleep. I quietly crept up, put on my clothes, and tucked the buns into my bosom. I also pulled a small bamboo basket from under the bed, along with a roll of sturdy hemp rope I had prepared long ago. Night in the cold palace was as silent as death. The wind blew through the withered treetops, making a whimpering sound, like the crying of ghosts. Clutching the basket, I walked step by step toward that abandoned well by memory. My heart hammered against my ribs. I was terrified of being discovered. Any unusual behavior in the eating quarters could result in a death sentence. But I couldn't stop my feet. Finally, I reached the edge of the well. The well opening, a dark abyss in the moonlight, was like the hideous maw of a giant beast. I placed the buns into the basket one by one, then tied one end of the rope to the basket handle, and wrapped the other end tightly around my wrist. I knelt by the well, closed my eyes, and carefully lowered the basket into the well. The rope slid inch by inch from my hands. Time moved slowly. Every second was agonizing. I didn't know how deep the well actually was. I only knew that my rope was very long. Finally, the tension on my wrist loosened. The basket had reached the bottom. I let out a long sigh of relief, feeling as if all my strength had been drained. I didn't know if the person in the well could find it, or if they even had the strength to get to it. I didn't even know if they would eat. I was just doing what I felt I had to do. I knelt quietly by the well, and waited for a while. There was no sound from below. Maybe they really were dead. I felt a mix of disappointment and relief. I pulled on the rope to bring the basket back. Just then, from deep within the well, came a sound, an extremely faint rustle of cloth against stone. My heart instantly leapt into my throat. I held my breath, frozen in place. Next, I felt the rope around my wrist being gently tugged. They were alive. An indescribable wave of excitement washed over me. I didn't know why I was so happy. Perhaps because a life had been sustained. After another moment, the rope was tugged again. I slowly pulled the rope back up. The basket was much lighter than when I lowered it. Once it reached the mouth of the well, I looked by the moonlight. All 6 buns were gone. He ate them all. I grinned, smiling silently. Since entering the palace, this was the first time I had been so happy. I was just about to leave, when a voice suddenly came from the well. The voice was low and raspy, with the weakness of someone recovering from a long illness. But it was clearly a man's voice. "Who are you?" The smile on my face froze instantly. I felt as though I'd been struck by lightning. My whole body stiffened, and my blood seemed to stop flowing. A man? The person locked in this well wasn't some deposed empress at all. It was him. My mind went blank. Fear, like countless cold vipers, instantly coiled around my heart, making it impossible to breathe. Mama Roan lied to us. Or rather, the entire palace was spinning a monstrous lie. This wasn't a prison for a deposed empress. It was the grave of a living man. Who was he? Why was he locked here? Why did the palace use the empress's name to cover it up? 1,000 questions exploded in my head, each one more chilling than the last. I reflexively took a step back, stepping on a dry branch. It made a sharp crack. The sound was incredibly piercing in the dead silence of the night. The man in the well seemed to hear my movement. His voice softened slightly. I mean no harm. Though his voice was weak, it possessed a natural, convincing power. But I was still afraid. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of the secret. A man who needed to be hidden in such a manner. His identity, and his enemies, must be incredibly powerful. And I, a lowly palace maid, just because of a momentary act of kindness, had stepped into A vortex that could easily crush me to pieces. "Who are you?" he asked again. I bit my lip hard, not daring to make a sound. How should I answer? Tell him my name? And then what? Wait to be silenced? The well went silent. He seemed to realize that his question was too abrupt. After a long time, he finally sighed. There was a hint of self-mockery in his voice. "Whoever you are, thank you for the buns. They are the best thing I've eaten in these 3 years. 3 years? My heart wrenched. He's been trapped here for 3 whole years. Stones thrown at him every day. No food, no water. How did he survive? The mere thought of it sent shivers down my spine. Go quickly. It's dangerous here. Don't come back again," he said. The well fell into dead silence once more. I stood there, my hands and feet ice cold. Logic told me I should turn around and leave immediately, pretending nothing happened tonight. That was the safest choice. But my feet felt like they had taken root. I couldn't move an inch. I couldn't forget his words, the best thing he'd eaten in 3 years. I also couldn't forget his final words, "Don't come back again." He clearly wanted to live so badly, yet he was advising me to stay away. The moonlight shone on my face, cold as water. I took a deep breath, as if gathering every ounce of my strength, and whispered toward the well, in a voice no louder than a mosquito's buzz, "I will come back tomorrow." Then I grabbed the basket and ran without looking back. I didn't dare look at the reaction from the well. I was afraid to see hope, and afraid to see despair. I ran all the way back to my quarters, burying myself under the cold quilt, shivering. I didn't close my eyes for the rest of the night. When dawn broke, I had dark circles under my eyes. As I followed the others to work, Mama Roan glanced at me again, with a probing look in her eyes. "Didn't sleep well?" Replying to Mama, I had a nightmare. I lowered my head, and answered submissively, "Useless thing." Mama Roan snorted coldly, and didn't ask further. My hands were shaking badly while throwing stones. I was terrified I'd accidentally throw one off target, and hit the man at the bottom. I could only pray silently in my heart. I was uneasy all day long. I was scared. I feared that last night was just a hallucination. Or worse, I feared he believed me, and was actually waiting for me. Once I walked toward that well again, there would be no turning back. Night fell once more. I tossed and turned in bed. To go or not to go? That question was like 2 giant boulders weighing on my heart. In the end, I still got up. I didn't know why. Maybe it was because of his raspy thank you. Or maybe I just didn't want to disappoint him. This time, I didn't just bring buns. I also brought a small water skin. I had used a month of my wages to secretly buy it from a manager. I traded with a young eunuch. I returned to the well. The same moonlight. The same deathly silent courtyard. But my heart was much calmer than the night before. I skillfully lowered the basket to the bottom. Almost the instant the basket touched the ground, the rope was gently tugged. He was waiting for me. This realization made my heart skip a beat for some reason. I waited quietly. Soon, the rope was tugged again. I pulled back the basket. The buns and the water skin were gone. I sighed in relief, and turned to leave. "Wait," his voice called out. I stopped in my tracks, with my back to the well. "You don't have to tell me who you are. We'll set a rule." His voice was steady, with an unquestionable air of authority. "From now on, after you set the things down, just knock 3 times on the well curb, then leave. I'll wait until I hear the sound before coming out. This way, it's safer for you." I was stunned. I hadn't expected his first thought to be my safety. "All right," I softly replied. "Also, I am injured. It's serious. If you can get some wound medicine and clean cloth strips, I would be eternally grateful. Of course, if it's too dangerous, forget I said anything." Wound medicine. That was one of the most strictly controlled items in the palace. Only the Imperial Pharmacy and the guard camp had it. How could I, a mere maid from the Yiting, get it? This was too dangerous. I should have refused. But the words that came out were, "I'll try." I regretted it as soon as I said it. Why did I agree to something that was almost impossible to achieve? The well was silent for a long time. Finally, he whispered, "Take care." I couldn't stay a moment longer, and ran back to my room. I threw myself onto the bed, feeling despair for the first time. Where was I going to get wound medicine? The words wound medicine were like 3 mountains, crushing the breath out of me. In the palace, medicine was more valuable than human life, especially medicine for wounds, a literal lifesaver. Ordinary people wouldn't even get a glimpse of it. Yiting was full of eyes. If I even went near the pharmacy, my body would be in the mass grave by the next morning. Plus, my 1 month of wages wasn't enough to buy even the lowest grade herbs. I lay in bed sleepless all night, thinking of 1,000 ways and rejecting them one by one. Near dawn, I suddenly felt something hard-hidden under my pillow. It was a silver hairpin, a very old one, marked with the simplest auspicious cloud pattern. My mother had secretly tucked it into my hand before I entered the palace. She said if I ever reached a point where I couldn't survive, I should trade it for a few buns. This was the only valuable thing I had, and the only memento left by my mother. My hand gripped the silver hairpin tightly. The cold touch of the pin made my palm ache. A plan slowly began to take shape in my mind. The next day, clutching the silver hairpin, I used a stomachache as an excuse to ask Mama Rong for leave. Mama Rong looked at me with disgust, impatiently waving me off and telling me to get lost. I kept my head down and quickly left the cold palace. I didn't go to the imperial pharmacy. It was heavily guarded. I couldn't even get inside. My target was the small courtyard behind the imperial kitchen. A young eunuch named Xiao Shunzi lived there. He was responsible for odd jobs at the imperial pharmacy, going there every day to dispose of herb dregs. I had seen him a few times. He always looked like he hadn't slept, but his eyes were always darting around, revealing a mix of cleverness and greed. I was betting he would take a risk for money. I waited in a corner outside the courtyard for a long time. Finally, I saw Xiao Shunzi carrying a wooden bucket, humming a little tune as he walked out. I took a deep breath, stepped out from the shadows, and blocked his path. "Who are you?" Xiao Shunzi was startled, looking at me warily. "Lord Eunuch, I want to make a deal with you." I opened my palm, revealing the silver hairpin glinting in the sunlight. Xiao Shunzi's eyes lit up instantly. He immediately dragged me into a more hidden corner, lowering his voice to ask, "What do you want to buy?" "Wound medicine." Xiao Shunzi's face changed instantly. "Are you crazy? That's a capital offense." He started to walk away even as he spoke. "This hairpin is solid silver. It's worth at least 5 taels of silver. Enough for you to buy a good acre of land outside the palace." Xiao Shunzi's footsteps stopped. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down, his eyes full of struggle. 5 taels was a fortune for servants like us. Something we couldn't save in a lifetime. I'm just someone who dumps dregs. I know that among the herbs you dump, there are always unused ingredients, or medicine bottles knocked over during consultations. No one would ever know. My voice was very soft, like a devil's temptation. Xiao Shunzi stared fixedly at the silver pin in my hand. His breathing grew heavy. After a long while, he gritted his teeth. "Give it to me." I pressed the silver hairpin into his hand. "Same time, same place tomorrow." Xiao Shunzi finished quickly, clutched the pin, and ran off with his bucket without looking back. I watched his retreating back, my heart hanging in my throat. I didn't know if he would keep his promise, or if he would report me, just to keep the silver for himself. That day was the longest I'd ever experienced in the palace. I didn't go to the well that night. I was afraid to see the man's disappointment. The next day, with a nervous heart, I returned to that corner. Xiao Shunzi was already waiting for me. He saw me, and without a word, pulled a small oil paper packet from his bosom, and shoved it into my hand. "This is all there is. Now go, and don't ever look for me again." He turned and fled as if he'd seen a ghost. I squeezed that small paper packet. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I had succeeded. I had used my mother's only legacy to get him his life-saving medicine. I didn't know if this deal was a gain or a loss. Tucking the medicine away, I walked back with a trembling heart. As I neared the entrance to the cold palace, I ran straight into Mama Rong. "Stop right there," she called out. My heart skipped a beat. "What were you doing, rushing around like that?" Mama Rong narrowed her eyes, sizing me up like she was interrogating a criminal. Replying to Mama, my stomach still hurts. "I went to get some herbs." I lowered my head, not daring to look her in the eye. "Oh? When did a maid of Yiting become so precious? Instead of waiting to die when sick, you even know how to find medicine?" Her voice was full of suspicion and malice. My back was instantly soaked in cold sweat. I gripped the packet in my clothes tightly, my nails digging into my flesh. Fortunately, Mama Rong only mocked me for a few more moments, and didn't search me. She waved her hand impatiently. "Get back to work." It felt like a grand reprieve. I ran off as if my life depended on it. It wasn't until I reached my room that my legs gave out. I leaned against the door, panting heavily. That was too close. I had a strong premonition that Mama Rong had already begun to suspect me. That night, I went to the well again. I put the wound medicine and a clean inner garment torn into strips into the basket. Then I knocked 3 times on the well curb. Knock, knock, knock. The sound traveled far in the night. I lowered the basket, turned, and left, without staying for even a second. I didn't know if he got the medicine. I only knew that I couldn't stay here any longer. Just as I had taken a few steps, his voice came from behind me, soft, but firm. I stopped in my tracks, stunned. "What?" "My name." The voice from the well came again. "My name is Xiao Qi." "Xiao Qi." I repeated the name in my mind. My heart suddenly constricted. I remembered now. 3 years ago, the crown prince who shook the court was named Xiao Qi. Rumors said he led an army into battle, died on the field, and his body was never found, so he didn't die after all. He was imprisoned right here. I felt a chill run from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. I was actually saving the current crown prince. I didn't dare think any further, and bolted away. Just as I was about to disappear around the corner, I glanced back. In the moonlight, a dark figure was standing on the highest roof ridge of the cold palace. That tall, thin silhouette. It was Mama Rong. She had been watching me the entire time. My world completely collapsed at that moment. Mama Rong, she stood on the roof, like a phantom from hell. The night wind whipped the hem of her gray clothes. Those cloudy eyes gleamed with a cold light under the moon. She was locked onto me. She saw everything. Me bringing things to the person in the well. Me talking to the person in the well. I had even heard that name, Xiaoqi. I'm finished. Only those 2 words remained in my mind. My blood seemed to freeze in an instant. And my limbs became colder than the well water in winter. I even forgot to run. I just stood there frozen, like a death row prisoner waiting for the sentence, looking up at the phantom that decided my life and death. Mama Rong didn't move, nor did she shout. She just stared at me, and the corners of her mouth seemed to curl into an eerie smile, a mocking smile. Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness. He was gone, but what I felt wasn't the relief of surviving a disaster. It was a deeper fear, like falling into a bottomless abyss. The unknown is the most terrifying thing of all. I didn't know what she was going to do, or what kind of method she would use, to torture me, or kill me. I stumbled back to my room, threw myself onto the bed, and covered my head with the quilt, but my body shook like a leaf in the wind. That night, I kept my eyes open until dawn. I waited for someone to burst in and drag me out, waiting for Mama Rong's shrill voice, to announce my execution date, but nothing happened. When dawn broke, everything was as usual. The other maids woke up with sleepy eyes, dressing and grooming themselves. No one spared me a second glance, as if everything last night had just been a nightmare of mine. But I knew it wasn't. With dark circles under my eyes, I followed the group to work. My heart was in my throat the whole way. Every step felt like walking on the edge of a blade. Mama Rong appeared. As usual, she wore a deadpan expression, holding a long, thin bamboo whip in her hand. She scanned each and every one of us. When her gaze landed on me, it didn't linger for a second, passing over me naturally. She didn't look at me. She didn't even say a word to me. This was more terrifying than being beaten or scolded. She was like a patient hunter, toying with the desperate prey in the palm of her hand. She wanted to slowly grind away all my will and hope. When it came time to throw the stones, my hands shook so much I could barely hold them. I didn't dare get close to the well. I was afraid Mama Rong would suddenly push me from behind, sending me down to join that man. But I had to go over. Holding a stone, I walked mechanically to the well and threw it down. The sound of the stone falling felt like the tolling of my funeral bell. All day long, I lived in extreme torment. Mama Rong continued to ignore me, but I could feel those viper-like eyes staring at me from the shadows at all times. I felt like a transparent person. All my fear and despair were laid bare before her. When the buns were handed out in the evening, I still received 2. No more, no less. I had no appetite. I couldn't eat a single bite. Wei Ning, are you sick? I shook my head, unable to speak. I didn't know how many more days I had to live. I didn't know how Xiaoqi was doing down in the well. Did he get the medicine? Are his injuries any better? Does he know we've been exposed? I didn't dare think about it any further, fearing I would collapse. In the middle of the night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I didn't dare go to the well. I knew Mama Rong must be waiting for me in some corner. If I dared take a single step out of the room, she would pounce like a cat on a mouse, tearing me apart. I could only lie there and wait, waiting for the blade hanging over my head to fall. The second day, the third day, everything remained the same. Mama Rong still ignored me. The entire cold palace was as calm as stagnant water. But I knew, beneath the surface was an undercurrent capable of swallowing everything. This silent torture was more soul-crushing than any physical punishment. My nerves were stretched to their limit. On the morning of the 4th day, during the assembly, Mama Rong suddenly called my name. Wei Ning. Her voice wasn't loud, but it sounded like a thunderclap in my ears. All the maids looked at me in unison. There was curiosity and sympathy in their eyes, but mostly, there was schadenfreude. I walked out and knelt before her. I couldn't stop my voice from trembling uncontrollably. Mama Rong looked down at me, a strange smile appearing on her face. You haven't looked well these past few days. The rough work of throwing stones must have exhausted you. Your servant does not. I buried my head even lower. How about this? From today, I'll change your task. My heart sank instantly. His Majesty is compassionate. He feels that the one in the well has been down there too long, and might develop an illness, polluting the aura of the palace. From today onwards, you all no longer need to throw stones. The maids began to whisper among themselves. Mama Rong raised her hand to silence them. Her gaze fell on me once more, sharp as 2 poisoned steel needles. His Majesty has decreed, every day at 5 o'clock, a bucket of quicklime water must be poured into the well, to disinfect and sever that unclean connection. Quicklime water. My mind went buzz. It went completely blank. That stuff is extremely corrosive. Just a drop on the skin would burn off a layer. Pouring an entire bucket down. That wasn't disinfection. That was murder. It was meant to burn the person at the bottom of the well alive, dissolving them into a pool of bloody water. This task is quiet and dignified. Wei Ning, I'll leave it to you. 1 bucket every day. Pour it in with your own hands. Don't disappoint His Majesty or me. I knelt on the ground, cold all over, as if I'd fallen into an ice cellar. I finally understood this was her true goal. She didn't want me to die. She wanted me to personally kill the person I had saved. She wanted me to become just like her. An executioner with blood-stained hands. This was the most venomous punishment. To destroy the soul. I don't know how I made it back to my room. Only the words, quicklime water, remained in my mind, like a most wicked curse, echoing repeatedly, crushing the last bit of my sanity. I collapsed on the cold floor, my body trembling incessantly. The sunlight outside was clearly warm, but it felt like it had no temperature against my skin. Mama Rong's words, every single syllable, were like red-hot irons, pressed against my heart. She wanted me to kill him personally, to kill Xiaoqi in the most cruel and painful way possible. If I did as ordered, I would end the life I had struggled so hard to save. My conscience would be pinned to a pillar of shame forever, suffering day and night. If I didn't, I would become a corpse in the next moment, thrown out of the palace to feed the wild dogs. It was a dead end with no exit whatsoever. I curled up in the corner. Despair overwhelmed me like a tide. What should I do? What could I do? Time ticked away. 5 o'clock drew closer and closer. I could imagine Mama Rong standing in the courtyard, waiting to see what choice I would make. She must enjoy this feeling of controlling the life and death of others, like a cat playing with a mouse under its paw, not in a hurry to eat it, but wanting to watch it struggle in terror, until it breaks. No, I cannot let her succeed. I cannot just accept this fate. An idea, like a spark of lightning, burst from the depths of my mind. I have to tell Xiaoqi. I must tell him. Even if we both have to die today, I want him to know why. Instead of waiting with hope for food and water, only to receive a bucket of quicklime water to dissolve his flesh. This thought gave me an immediate sense of purpose. I leaped up from the floor. I began searching frantically in my room. I needed something to write with, but I had nothing. I was just a low-level maid of Yiting. I didn't even have the right to own a piece of paper or a pen. What should I do? I was sweating with anxiety, like a headless fly. Suddenly, my eyes fell on the sewing basket at the head of the bed. Inside was a piece of white cloth I had brought when I entered the palace. It was meant for mending clothes. That's it. I rushed over and tore off a palm-sized strip of cloth. Then, I bit my own finger. Blood immediately welled up. Enduring the pain, I used my fingertip dipped in blood to quickly write a few words. Quicklime water today at noon. They know. Leave quickly. Take care. The writing was crooked and smelled of blood, but it was the only thing I could do. When I finished, I gripped the blood letter tightly in my palm. My heart hammered wildly. Now came the hardest step. How was I supposed to get this letter to him? Going to the well now would be walking into a trap. Mama Rong must be watching nearby. The moment I got close to that well, she would catch me red-handed. I had to find a way to distract her, even if just for a second. My eyes scanned every object in the room. Finally, they landed on the dusty charcoal basin in the corner. An extremely bold, even insane, plan formed in my heart. I took a deep breath, tucked the blood letter into the innermost layer of my clothes, then picked up the charcoal basin and walked out. The courtyard was very quiet. A few maids were sweeping in the distance. Mama Rong was indeed not there, but I knew she must be in some corner I couldn't see, watching me like a venomous snake. Carrying the basin, I didn't walk towards the well. Instead, I walked in the opposite direction, toward a long-abandoned woodshed. It was filled with dry branches and dead leaves, accumulated over the seasons, dry and flammable. I walked to the door of the woodshed and looked around, acting like a nervous thief. Then I quietly slipped inside. I dumped the charcoal from the basin onto the driest straw. Then from my bosom, I pulled out a fire starter I had prepared earlier. I had asked for it from Xiao Shunzi. When I exchanged the water skin before, I didn't expect it to come in handy today. My hands were shaking. Arson in the palace is a major crime punishable by death for the entire clan, but I couldn't care about that anymore. I struck the fire starter and lit the straw. Flame flickered and suddenly surged up. Thick smoke instantly filled the entire woodshed. I didn't stay for a second. I turned and ran out. I didn't run back to my room, but towards the entrance of the cold palace. As I ran, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Fire! Fire! The woodshed is on fire!" My shouts shattered the silence of the cold palace. The sweeping maids dropped their brooms in terror, looking in panic at the billowing smoke coming from the woodshed. Soon, the entire cold palace was in chaos. Screams and shouts blended into a mess. I knew Mama Rong must have been alerted too. A fire in the cold palace. As the person in charge, she couldn't escape the blame. All her attention now must be focused on putting out the fire. This was my chance. While everyone was rushing toward the woodshed, I suddenly turned around, and, like a wisp of smoke, sprinted against the crowd toward the abandoned well. My heart beat so fast it felt like it would jump out of my throat. This was time bought with my life. I reached the well, not even having time to catch my breath. I pulled the blood letter from my clothes, and tied it to a small stone. I had no rope, so I used the strip of cloth itself, to tie a tight knot as fast as I could. Then, I threw it into the well. There was a soft thump. I had done it. Facing the well, I used all my strength to mouth a silent message, "Go quickly." Then, I ran toward the chaotic crowd without looking back. I blended into the firefighting group. grabbed a bucket, and pretended to be busy. My back was already soaked with cold sweat. I didn't know if Xiaoqi had seen my note. I only knew that I had done my best. The rest was up to fate. The fire spread faster than I expected. The entire cold palace was shrouded in smoke and panic. I saw Mama Rong's face turn pale. She was screaming like a madwoman, directing everyone to put out the fire. For the first time, a look of utter panic appeared on her face. A fire in the cold palace was too great a responsibility. It was enough to cost her head. She had no time to worry about a tiny ant like me right now. I stayed in the crowd, running back and forth with a water bucket. No one noticed me. Chaos became my best camouflage. While fighting the fire, I used the corner of my eye to keep a close watch on that well. I saw a few eunuchs running to the well in the confusion, hoping to draw water. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. I was afraid they would discover the secret under the well. Fortunately, the well had long since dried up. After a few attempts, they cursed and gave up, running toward a further water vat instead. I let out a long sigh of relief. The fire burned for a full hour. Before, with the help of the guards who arrived after hearing the news, it was finally extinguished. By nightfall, the woodshed had been reduced to charred ruins. Mama Rong collapsed on the ground, her face ash-gray. I knew her good days were over. Soon, a supervisor eunuch came by, gave her a harsh scolding, and dragged her away like a dead dog. Before leaving, her resentful gaze swept through the crowd. I lowered my head and hid behind a tall maid. Avoiding her sight, Mama Rong was taken away. My biggest threat was temporarily removed. But I couldn't feel happy at all. My heart felt like it was weighed down by a huge boulder. How was Xiaoqi? Did he see my note? Could he escape? Leaving quickly is easier said than done. The four walls of that well were smooth, and it was bottomless. He was likely seriously injured, unarmed and defenseless. How could he leave? I didn't dare think about it. I was afraid of imagining the worst possible outcome. Over the next 2 days, the entire cold palace was in a state of oppression and chaos. The new supervisor hadn't arrived yet. We maids were temporarily confined to our quarters, not allowed to leave at will. The tasks of throwing stones and pouring quicklime water naturally stopped. This gave me a chance to catch my breath, but it also gave me endless torment. I waited every day, waiting for news of Xiaoqi. Even hearing that he was caught would be better than this state of uncertainty. But there was nothing. The palace remained calm, as if there had never been a crown prince named Xiaoqi, imprisoned in the abandoned well of the cold palace, and there had never been a maid named Wei Ning, who set a great fire for him. On the third night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. I decided to go back to that well and look, one last time. If he was still alive, maybe he would leave some kind of signal. If he was gone, or already dead, I should give up hope too. I avoided the patrolling eunuchs, and returned to the well like a ghost. The fire had burned down the woodshed, and scorched several nearby dead trees. The area was more open and desolate than before. In the moonlight, the dark, gaping well looked like a wound that wouldn't heal. I knelt by the well, and listened carefully. Below was a deathly silence. No sound of breathing, no sound of cloth rubbing, nothing at all. My heart sank bit by bit. He was gone, or he was. I didn't dare think further. Just as I prepared to leave, at the very moment I stood up, my peripheral vision caught something in a crevice of the well stone. Something seemed to be stuck there, under the moonlight. It gave off a dim, metallic glint. My heart skipped a beat, and I hurriedly leaned closer. I carefully picked it out. From the crevice, it was a token made of black iron, only about half a palm in size. It was cold to the touch, and incredibly heavy. On one side of the token was a lifelike tiger carved into it. On the other side was the character Xiao in an ancient, flowing script. Is this a tiger tally? No, a tiger tally should be a pair. This was only half a piece, more like a personal keepsake. A unique token representing his identity. He left it for me. Why? While I was puzzled, I noticed there were extremely small words carved on the edge of the token. I struggled to identify them by the moonlight. It was a sentence, North Gate, Uncle Zhang. North Gate, Uncle Zhang. I was stunned. The North Gate was the most remote exit of the cold palace, closed all year round, guarded by only an old soldier surnamed Zhang. I had seen him a few times. He was always reticent, his face weathered by time, like a stone statue. Xiaoqi wanted me to find him. This Uncle Zhang was his man. My heart began to throb uncontrollably. This wasn't an end. This was a beginning. Xiaoqi hadn't given up. After escaping, he had left new instructions for me. He trusted me. He wanted me to be his only eyes and hands in this deep palace. I held that cold token, feeling it like a branding iron, my palm tingling with the heat. I knew, from the moment I took this token, my fate was firmly tied to his. We would live or die together. I took that cold iron token and hid it in the lining of my only inner garment. I used needle and thread to sew it in securely. It rested against my chest. Sometimes it was ice cold. Sometimes it seemed to be warmed by my body temperature, becoming a burning sensation. It reminded me That I was no longer just the Wei Ning who only sought to survive. My life was now tied to the crown prince named Xiaoqi. We share the glory, and we share the ruin. After Mama Rong was taken away, the cold palace was like a group without a leader. It was chaotic for several days. It wasn't until the fourth day that the new manager arrived. She was surnamed Wang. Everyone called her Mama Wang. She was completely different from Mama Rong. She didn't beat or scold anyone. She always stood quietly in the corner of the courtyard, watching us, wearing a gray uniform that had been washed until it was almost white. In her hand, she fiddled with a string of prayer beads. On her face, there was always a faint, fleeting smile. But when I saw her, I felt a chill down my spine at first glance. Mama Rong's malice was out in the open, like a wild, barking mad dog. But this Mama Wang, her malice was hidden in her bones. She was like a venomous snake lurking in the shadows, keeping silent, but ready to deliver a fatal blow at any moment. On the very first day she arrived, she reorganized the rules of the cold palace. Everyone's chores were reassigned. Unsurprisingly, I was assigned the most exhausting and filthiest job, cleaning up the ruins after the fire, and then transporting all the charred charcoal and debris to the dump site at the northernmost part of the cold palace. The palace maids all looked at me with pitying eyes, but only I knew that this was a golden opportunity one could only dream of, because the north gate of the cold palace was right next to that dump site. Every day, I pushed a creaking wheelbarrow, shuttling back and forth between the ruins and the dump site. My face and body were covered in black charcoal dust. I looked as if I had been rolling in the mud. No one wanted to come near me, which suited me just fine. The first time I pushed the barrow near the north gate, my heart was pounding wildly. I saw the old soldier guarding the gate, Uncle Zhang. He wore a tattered suit of armor, leaning against the mottled palace wall, closing his eyes as if dozing off. His face was etched with deep, axe-cut wrinkles. Everything around him seemed to have nothing to do with him. I dumped the trash from the barrow, and then pushed the empty barrow slowly towards him. My palms were covered in sweat. Uncle Zhang, I called out softly. His eyelids didn't even twitch, as if he hadn't heard. Uncle Zhang. I called again, raising my voice slightly. He finally opened his eyes slowly. What kind of eyes were those, cloudy yet sharp, like someone who had seen mountains of corpses and seas of blood on a battlefield? He glanced at me indifferently, not a single ripple of emotion in his gaze. What is it? His voice sounded like the scraping of rusty iron. I was so nervous I couldn't speak. How should I begin? How could I make him believe me? If it's nothing, get lost, he said, and was about to close his eyes again. I panicked, mustered all my courage, lowered my voice, and said quickly, the tiger roars in the forest. The hidden dragon rests in the abyss. This was the secret code I had thought about all night. The tiger on the token, Xiaoqi's identity as the hidden dragon. I gambled that he would understand. Sure enough, Uncle Zhang's body jolted violently. In those cloudy eyes, a terrifyingly sharp light instantly burst forth. Like an awakened lion, he grabbed my wrist and dragged me into the small, dimly lit room behind him. With a bang, the door was slammed shut. Who are you? Where is the token? He stared intently at me, his voice full of murderous intent. Trembling, I unfastened the sealed lining from my garment and handed the black iron token to him. The moment he saw the token, the murderous intent throughout his body vanished instantly, replaced by uncontrollable excitement. His hand shook as he took the token, as if holding some priceless treasure. He stroked the tiger carving over and over. His eyes actually turned red. Your Highness is still alive. Is he all right? He muttered to himself, his voice choked with emotion. He looked up, gazing at me with an imploring look. I told him how I found Xiaoqi, how I brought him buns, how I got the wound medicine, and the entire process of setting the fire to send a signal. I told him everything. Uncle Zhang listened quietly. After hearing it, this man who would bleed but not cry on the battlefield, bowed deeply to me, a lowly palace maid. Lady, for your great kindness, Zhang and the 30,000 Shinbei soldiers under His Highness's command will never forget it for all eternity. I was startled by his gesture, and hurriedly helped him up. Uncle Zhang, is His Highness safe now? That was what I cared about. He is safe. His Highness has already left the palace and joined our people. The heart that had been hanging in suspense finally settled. Then, what should we do next? I asked. Uncle Zhang's expression became serious again. His Highness said, what he lacks most right now is information from inside the palace. And you are His Highness's most important nail planted within the imperial palace. I looked at him, and nodded vigorously. The first thing I need you to do is to keep a close eye on that new Mama Wang. His Highness needs to know everything about her. Specifically, the white jade hairpin on her head. What pattern is carved on it? Also, does she talk in her sleep at night? I was stunned. This task sounded a bit strange, but Xiaoqi must have his reasons for this arrangement. I understand. I tucked the token away securely again, and solemnly bowed to Uncle Zhang. How shall I pass messages to you? No need. You just need to write the message on a slip of paper, and weigh it down with a stone under the locust tree, on the easternmost side of the dump site. Every night after dark, I will naturally go and collect it. I've noted it down. stepping out of that dim room. The sunlight outside was a bit dazzling. I pushed my small wheelbarrow back. My steps had never been as firm as they were now. I knew that from today on. I was no longer alone. Behind me stood a former crown prince and 30,000 Jinbei soldiers. Back at the courtyard, Mama Wang was standing there, supervising the palace maid's work. When she saw me pushing the barrow back, that indifferent smile was still on her face. "You're back?" she asked gently, as if I wasn't a filthy slave girl, but a family member returning late. "Yes, Mama." I lowered my head. "You've worked hard. Go wash your face and rest for a bit." Her voice was very soft, yet it made my hair stand on end. Showing undue courtesy usually hides evil intent. I didn't dare look up, muttered a response, and quickly went back to my room. I could feel her seemingly gentle eyes, pinned to my back like two sharp swords. I was being watched. This realization made me feel a sense of suffocation. Mama Wang was 100 times harder to deal with than Mama Rong. How was I to, right under her nose, complete the task Xiaoqi had given me? Observe the hairpin pattern, and eavesdrop on her sleep talking. Both of these things required me to be closest to her in the dead of night, but I didn't even have the qualification to approach her room. I tossed and turned on my bed, thinking for the entire night. The next day, I steeled my heart, and decided on a risky move. At noon, while all the palace maids were working in the courtyard, Mama Wang sat on a chair under the corridor, drinking tea and supervising. I was responsible for watering the plants in the courtyard. I carried the wooden bucket and deliberately walked past her. Then my foot accidentally slipped. With a splash, an entire bucket of water spilled onto the ground, soaking Mama Wang's shoes and the hem of her skirt. The entire courtyard fell silent in an instant. All the palace maids stopped their work, staring at me in horror. Their looks were as if they were looking at a dead person. Mama Wang slowly put down her teacup. She looked down at her soaked skirt. Then she looked up at me. The smile was still on her face. "Your name is Wei Ning, right? The servant deserves to die." I immediately knelt down, shaking all over like a sieve. "Get up. Since you're so careless, then you don't need to sleep tonight." Her voice was still frighteningly calm. She pointed to the open space in front of her room. "Kneel right here, and reflect well on how to make your knees steadier." My heart began to race. I had gambled correctly. "Thank you for the punishment, Mama." I cowed out heavily. Night came quickly. Night in the cold palace was bone-chillingly cold. I knelt there, ramrod straight, outside Mama Wang's door. The freezing stone slabs were like cold iron. Through my thin trousers, they sucked away the warmth from my knees bit by bit. Soon, my legs went numb, followed by a needle-like pain. But I gritted my teeth and didn't make a sound. I knew Mama Wang was in the room, watching me through the crack in the door. This was her testing me, and also my opportunity. At this point, the light in the room went out. I heard the sound of her getting into bed. Enduring the intense pain, I straightened my upper body even more. I had to make her think I was just a dull but exceptionally enduring fool. Another hour passed. Even breathing came from the room. She was asleep. My chance had come. I didn't move from my kneeling position. Instead, I carefully recalled the glance I caught when she stood up during the day. The white jade hairpin on her head. A flower was carved at the top of the pin. The petals of that flower were layered, enchanting and complex, the edges having delicate, serrated ridges like teeth. I had never seen a flower like that, but I etched its shape firmly into my mind. Then, I began to focus and listen intently. The night was silent. I could clearly hear Mama Wang's breathing coming from the room, steady and long. I waited patiently. The pain in my knees had turned into numbness. My consciousness even started to drift. Just as I was about to give in, an extremely faint, mumbled groan came from the room. I was instantly alert. I pressed my ear towards the door panel, straining to decipher the sound from the gap. She only said 2 words, the voice very blurry, as if something was stifling her in her dream. Then she turned over, and fell back into a deep sleep. Feng Ling. Was it Feng as in Phoenix? Was it Ling as in command? I repeated those 2 words over and over in my heart. Just then, a soft sound suddenly came from the room. It was the sound of the bed frame moving. My heart jumped into my throat. She was awake. I immediately knelt straight, eyes to nose to heart, pretending nothing had happened. With a creak, the door was pulled open a crack from the inside. Mama Wang's poisonous eyes shot out from the gap. She scrutinized me in the darkness for a long time. I could feel her gaze like a knife, scraping over every inch of my body. My back had long been soaked with cold sweat. If I had moved even the slightest bit just now, I might have been a corpse by now. After a long while, the door creaked shut again. I let out a long breath of turbid air, feeling as if I had just returned from the gates of hell. That night, I knelt until dawn. The next day, my knees were swollen like 2 steamed buns. I couldn't even stand steadily. Mama Wang, seeing my wretched state, had a satisfied smile on her face. "It seems you've learned your lesson. Be sharper in the future." She didn't punish me further and let me go back to rest. I limped back to my room, and fell into a deep sleep as soon as I hit the bed. I didn't wake up until evening. Ignoring my hunger, and the excruciating pain in my knees, I found a piece of charred charcoal, and on a small scrap of cloth, drew that eerie flower. Then I wrote down the words Feng Ling. After doing all this, I pushed my small barrow, and headed once more for the locust tree at the north gate dump site. I used a stone to weigh down the cloth, securing it tightly. I didn't know if this counted as a ray of hope. I only knew I had traded half my life for it. The next few days were calm. Mama Wang seemed to have forgotten about me, the palace maid who had erred. She no longer deliberately paid attention to me, and I was happy for the peace. I just kept my head down and worked every day, but I knew those eyes of hers must still be watching me from the shadows. Every day, I would use the chance to dump trash, to go to that locust tree. The stone where I left things was gone, but nothing new had appeared there. Uncle Zhang, or rather Xiao Qi, hadn't given me new instructions. This made me somewhat uneasy. Was the information I brought back useless? Or had something happened on their end? This waiting was more agonizing than the mission itself. It wasn't until the 5th day, when I went to dump trash as usual, that when I moved the stone, I saw a tiny slip of paper underneath. My heart gave a sudden leap. I quickly clenched the paper in my palm, and then pretended to push the barrow away naturally. Back in my own room, I only dared to unfold the paper after closing the door. There was only one line of text on it. The handwriting forceful and vigorous, exuding an unquestionable authority. It was Xiao Qi's handwriting. The flower is named Shura, from the western regions, unique to Prince Ying's estate. Feng Ling was bestowed by the late emperor. It means a token of the Phoenix Command. Wang is a secret guard planted in the palace by Prince Ying. Just 3 short sentences, yet they contained massive information. Shura flower, Prince Ying's estate. Phoenix Command, hidden spy. So, the person behind Mama Wang was the current emperor's most trusted brother, Prince Ying. 3 years ago, when the crown prince Xiao Qi was toppled, he was the one who benefited the most. I finally understood. The block in the well, Mama Rong, Mama Wang, all of this was Prince Ying's handiwork. He was the one who orchestrated the conspiracy to imprison the crown prince. A chill suddenly surged up my back. I had always thought my enemy was just a supervisor mama. Now I knew. My enemy was a prince whose power shook the court. I clutched the note, my palms sweating incessantly. At the very end of the note, there was one more sentence. Well done. Wait patiently. Seeing those 4 words, my panicked and uneasy heart miraculously calmed down. This was Xiao Qi's affirmation of me, and also his promise to me. I wasn't fighting alone. I let out a long sigh of relief, held the note over the oil lamp, and watched it turn to ash. This was our first victory. Although insignificant, we had successfully torn a small hole in the enemy's impenetrable iron wall. However, I had celebrated too early. The next morning, as soon as I stepped out of my room, I felt the atmosphere was wrong. The entire cold palace was filled with a murderous air. All the palace maids and eunuchs were driven into the courtyard. Dozens of imperial guards with sharp blades had the courtyard surrounded so tightly that even water couldn't leak out. Mama Wang stood on the steps, her face so dark it could drip ink. Last night, a thief entered the palace, and something very important was stolen. Now, everyone return to your rooms, and stand by. I will search every single one of you. My heart skipped a beat. A search? Why so sudden? Was it a coincidence, or was it directed at me? I didn't dare think too much, and followed the crowd back to the room. I sat by the bed, listening to the guards' rowdy, brutal sounds of searching outside. Instead, my heart was very calm. I had nothing on me. Xiao Qi's token was sewn into my undergarment, and all the notes had been burned by me. They would find nothing. Soon, it was my room's turn. 2 guards burst in, took my few pitiful belongings, and turned everything upside down. The bed boards were overturned. The pillow was torn apart. Even the cracks between the floor bricks were carefully inspected. The result, of course, was nothing. The guards left, cursing under their breath. I had just breathed a sigh of relief when Mama Wang walked in. She dismissed her attendants and stood alone before me. She didn't look at the room that had been turned into a mess. Her eyes just stared intently at me for a long, long time. So long that I thought time had stopped. Then, she slowly smiled. Wei Ning, you are very capable, she said. My heart instantly sank to the bottom. Mama, this servant doesn't understand what you mean. Oh, you understand. Mama Wang walked up to me, reached out, and gently brushed away a bit of dust from my shoulder. Her movement was very gentle, but her fingertips were as cold as ice. Some rats always think they've hidden well, hiding in dark corners, secretly coveting things that don't belong to them. They don't know that the reason the farmer doesn't act immediately is just to wait for them to grow a bit fatter, and then catch them all at once. When she finished, she stood up and gave me a deep look, a look full of mockery and murderous intent. Then she turned and left. I stood there, frozen to the core. I was exposed. She knew everything. She had no evidence, but she was certain I was that rat. The reason she didn't touch me was just because she wanted to cast a long line to catch a big fish. She wanted to use me to lure Xiao Qi out as well. I had become bait. Bait that could be abandoned at any time. Sacrificed bait. I had become bait. Mama Wang's words were like a poisoned key, opening the door to the deepest fear in my heart. She knew She knew everything. She knew I wasn't just an ordinary, law-abiding palace maid. She knew I was secretly in contact with the person in the well. The reason she didn't kill me immediately was only because my utility value hadn't been squeezed dry yet. She wanted to use me, this small fish, to catch the big fish that was Xiaoqi, standing in the room that had been turned into a mess. The blood in my body felt as if it were frozen. A kind of unprecedented despair, like a giant net, covered me tightly. What should I do? Stop contacting Uncle Zhang? Then Xiaoqi would lose his only eyes in the palace. And I would, for losing my value, be crushed to death by Mama Wang without hesitation. Continue the contact? Then every bit of information I passed out, every single word, might be a carefully designed trap. I might personally lead Xiaoqi to his death. This was a dead-end game. No matter how I moved, the final result would be eternal damnation. I slowly crouched down and began to tidy up the mess on the floor. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but my mind, in that extreme fear, became exceptionally clear. Don't panic, Wei Ning. Don't panic. Panic is the first weakness prey exposes in front of a hunter. Mama Wang wants to see me struggle, see me fear, see me make mistakes. I simply won't let her have her way. She wants me to be the bait? Then I'll be the best bait there is. Only, it's yet to be seen who is the hunter and who is the prey. My heart grew cold bit by bit. Fear was replaced by something even colder called determination. I tidied up the room exactly as it was before, and then went out to continue my work. My expression was the same as usual, full of numbness and submissiveness, even more humble than before, and more timid. I disguised myself as a mouse that had been completely terrified. Mama Wang sat silently under the corridor, watching me quietly. Her gaze was like she was admiring an interesting plaything. I could feel that, from this moment on, my every move would be exposed to her constant surveillance. I had to find an opportunity, an absolutely safe one, to pass out the most important information. I had to tell Xiaoqi that I was exposed. That opportunity soon arrived. 3 days later was the unified drain cleaning day in the palace. It was a dirty and tiring job. Every palace maid and eunuch in the Yeding had to be mobilized. The hidden canal behind the cold palace was naturally our responsibility. It stank to high heaven there, with silt piled up. The filthiest corner of the entire palace. Mama Wang would naturally not attend in person. She only sent a few older eunuchs to supervise. And those eunuchs only stood far away, pinching their noses, with looks of disgust. This was my chance. In the chaos and filth, no one was paying attention. I wore my oldest clothes, and jumped into the silt of the West Mountain Canal. The stench made me want to vomit, but I acted as if I couldn't feel it. Burying my head in the hard work, I used the chance while clearing the bottom stones, to quietly pull out from my bosom a small withered leaf I had prepared long ago. On it, I had written 2 words with charcoal, already known. Then I added, I know I am bait. These few words were enough for Xiaoqi to understand my current situation. I mixed the withered leaf into a handful of black silt, and then I walked to the section of the waterway closest to the North Gate garbage dump. There happened to be a small hole there, connected to the drainage ditch outside the wall. I pretended to slip, and fell into the silt. The moment I got up, I used all my strength to throw the silt in my hand, out through the gap. After doing all this, my heart pounded wildly. I didn't know if Uncle Zhang would be able to find this tiny withered leaf, hidden among the countless pieces of trash. This was the only safe method I could think of. For the next few days, I acted even more cautiously. Mama Wang seemed very satisfied with my taming. She started giving me more detailed tasks, like cleaning her room, and bringing her tea. I knew this was an upgrade in surveillance. She had placed me in the closest possible spot to her. This way, any strange movement of mine wouldn't escape her eyes. This was dangerous, but it was also an opportunity. I could observe her from a closer distance. In her room, she always lit a very special incense. The scent was very faint, but it carried a strange, mentally relaxing effect. On her desk, there was always an unfinished scroll of Buddhist scriptures. Yet her hands were stained with a scent of blood that couldn't be washed away. She was a contradictory and terrifying woman. This afternoon, I was serving her tea. She was sitting by the window, holding a letter, lost in thought. I lowered my head and placed the teacup by her hand. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at a corner of the letter. A pattern was drawn there. The pattern of a flower, exactly the same as the shura flower on her hairpin. And next to the pattern, there was also a small word, annotated in cinnabar, Eastern Palace. My pupils constricted sharply. The Eastern Palace, that was where the Crown Prince used to live. Even though Xiaoqi was deposed, the Eastern Palace had remained locked down, guarded by the Imperial Guard. Why would the Eagle King's people mention the Eastern Palace in the letter? My heart began to race. I didn't dare look further. I set down the teacup and wanted to retreat. Stop, she suddenly spoke. My body instantly froze. This tea is a bit cold. Take it and change it for a fresh cup. She didn't look up. Her voice was very flat. I picked up the cup and walked out quickly. My back was already drenched in cold sweat. I didn't know if she was testing me. I only knew That in this palace, some massive secret must be hidden. That night, I went to the latrine on the pretext of a stomachache. On the wall of the latrine, I used a sharp stone to carve a small character, East. This was the emergency contact method I agreed on with Uncle Jean. When I couldn't leave a message under the locust tree, I would leave marks representing different information, in different places. East represented the highest level of alarm, and it also meant I had found a clue related to the Eastern Palace. After doing all this, I felt all the strength drain from my body. I knew that from the moment I carved this character, I had already pushed myself into the center of the storm. What I didn't know was that an even more insidious plot against me was quietly unfolding. After carving that character East, my heart was constantly in suspense. I didn't know if Uncle Jean could see it in time, nor did I know what kind of reaction Xiaoqi's side would make. Meanwhile, Mama Wang became increasingly inscrutable. She treated me with what could even be called kindness. She would reward me with some of her leftover snacks, and give me chores that weren't too tiring. The way she looked at me was like looking at a little kitten that had been tamed into submission. But I felt as if I were being locked into an invisible cage. The bars of the cage were her seemingly gentle, but actually icy eyes. I had nowhere to run. One day, she suddenly said to me, "Wei Ning, how long has it been since you came to the cold palace?" I was massaging her legs. Hearing the question, the movement of my hands paused, replying to Mama, "It has been nearly a year. I see that you are quite nimble, and you are an honest person. Staying here in the cold palace is, after all, a waste of your heart." My heart skipped a beat. What did she mean by that? I have a distant relative who works in the laundry bureau. They are short of a managing maid. If you are willing, I can help arrange for you to transfer to the laundry bureau. Even though that was also a place for rough work, compared to the dead silent cold palace, it was practically heaven. Moreover, the laundry bureau had many people and was chaotic, with a lot of movement. If I went there, it would mean escaping Mama Wang's direct control. This sounded like a huge blessing, but I smelled the strong scent of a conspiracy. Who was Mama Wang? Would she be so kind-hearted as to release this mouse she had already identified back into the crowd? Impossible. This had to be a trap set specifically for me, or rather, for Xiaoqi. She was testing me. If I showed any desire to leave the cold palace, it would prove I had a guilty conscience, and was eager to escape. If I refused, it would seem like I didn't appreciate the favor, which was equally suspicious. My mind was spinning fast. I had to give the most perfect answer. I fell to my knees with a thud, my face showing an expression of being overwhelmed and terrified. Mama's great kindness. This servant doesn't deserve it. My voice carried a sob, full of humility and fear. This servant is a stupid person. Serving Mama here is already the greatest blessing. This servant doesn't want to go anywhere. I just want to stay by Mama's side for my whole life. To serve you like an ox or a horse. As I spoke, I cowed out heavily until my forehead showed a red mark. Mama Wang watched me quietly. She watched for a long time before slowly smiling. "You girl, you are quite a loyal one. Since you don't want to leave, then stay." She reached out to help me up. "Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Mama." I was moved to tears. She didn't say anything more, just waved her hand for me to withdraw. I walked out of her room, feeling as if I had just been fished out of the water. I knew I had survived another hunt. I used my loyalty to temporarily allay her suspicions, but I also knew this was only temporary. Her testing of me would never stop. This cold palace was a nest of vipers, and Mama Wang was the most venomous snake of all. I was walking beside this snake every day. The slightest mistake and I would be swallowed whole. I had to figure out the secret of the Eastern Palace as soon as possible. I started using every opportunity to look for clues. When I cleaned the room, I would pay extra attention to the ashes of letters she burned. When I poured water for her, I would use the corner of my eye to peek at the documents on her desk, but I found nothing. Mama Wang did things without leaving a trace. All important things were handled by her cleanly. Just when I was about to despair, an opportunity delivered itself. Late one night, Mama Wang suddenly developed a high fever and started talking in her sleep. The little maid on watch was terrified and quickly ran to get me. I rushed into her room. I saw her lying on the bed, her face flushed red, her body burning hot, muttering something unclearly. "The Eastern Palace, cannot let them find it. Just behind the Buddha statue." My heart gave a sudden jump. The Buddha statue. I immediately thought of the one in her room, the small Buddhist shrine where incense burned all day. Was it the key to the Eastern Palace? So the Eagle King's people were looking for something in the Eastern Palace, and Mama Wang knew where it was. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I immediately dismissed the terrified little maid, telling her to go find an imperial doctor. Then I closed the door. I walked up to that shrine, my heart racing wildly. I took a deep breath, and carefully moved that semi-ancient porcelain guanine statue. The base of the statue was hollow. I reached inside, and touched a cold, hard object. I pulled it out. It was a key that was jet black all over, with a primitive design. On the handle of the key, there was carved a tiny, almost indistinguishable emblem. A phoenix rising from the flames. This was the key she mentioned in her dreams. I was about to hide the key in my bosom, when suddenly, Mama Wang, lying on the bed, snapped her eyes open. There was none of the blurred confusion of a fever. Her eyes were terrifyingly clear, staring straight at me and the key in my hand. She wasn't sick at all. She was faking it. She was baiting me. A bone-chilling cold instantly rushed from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. My mind went blank. It was over. This time I was caught red-handed by her. I was dead. Wei Ning, you truly didn't disappoint me. Tell me, what did Xiao Qi tell you to look for? My world. The moment Mama Wang finished that sentence, completely collapsed. Cold despair, and the shame of being exposed with nowhere to hide. I was like a prisoner stripped of all clothes, standing naked before her. All my disguises, all my struggles, became a joke at this moment. I lost. I lost completely. I tightly gripped that cold key in my hand. It felt like a branding iron, making my very soul tremble. What should I do? Beg for mercy? With Mama Wang's methods, she would only make me die more painfully. Resist? I was just a palace maid who couldn't even lift a heavy weight, while she was the Eagle King's most elite death soldier. I didn't have even a sliver of a chance. The word death clearly surfaced in my mind. Since it was death either way, I had to die with value. I couldn't betray Xiao Qi. I absolutely couldn't. In that moment of extreme fear, my mind instead burst forth with a crazy kind of calm. I looked at Mama Wang. Looking at her mocking face, the face of someone certain of victory, I suddenly smiled. Mama, what are you saying? Wasn't this the key you told me to find? The smile on Mama Wang's face stiffened slightly. Just now you had a high fever and were talking nonsense. You kept muttering about a key. You said the key was behind the Buddha statue, and told me to help you take it out and keep it safe. This servant was afraid you would forget, so I held up the key in my hand, my expression calm. As I spoke, I also showed a perfectly timed look of confusion and innocence. Mama Wang narrowed her eyes. Her viper-like eyes stared intently at me, seemingly trying to find a single flaw on my face. Is that so? Why don't I remember saying those things? You were delirious with fever, so of course you don't remember. I took 2 steps forward, and respectfully held the key out before her. Mama, look. The key has been found. You should keep it safe. This is an important item related to the Eastern Palace. It cannot be lost. I deliberately emphasized the words Eastern Palace. I was gambling that even though she had seen through my identity, she didn't know how much I actually knew. Gambling that she wouldn't dare kill me easily, based on a hypothetical crime. I, who might be the only living person, who knew the secret of the Eastern Palace. I was banking on her hesitation. Mama Wang didn't take the key. Her gaze was like a knife, scanning back and forth between my face and the key. The room was as silent as the grave. I could hear my own heart pounding against my ribs. Every second was a torment. I didn't know if my gamble would win. Right then, footsteps came from outside the door. Mama Wang, the doctor is here. It was the voice of the little maid, who had gone to get the doctor. Mama Wang's gaze shifted instantly. The murderous intent on her face ebbed away like a tide, replaced by a sickly weakness and fatigue. She snatched the key from my hand, clenching it tightly in her palm. Then she lowered her voice, using a volume only the 2 of us could hear, to say to me, Wei Ning, you are very smart. But smart people often don't live long. We shall see. After she finished, she lay back on the bed and made pained sounds. The door was pushed open. The doctor and the little maid walked in. I stood to the side with my head lowered, my palms full of cold sweat. I knew I had survived again for now. I used my acting and my guts to buy myself a little more time. But what about next time? Would I have such good luck next time? Mama Wang had completely torn off her disguise. She wouldn't give me any more chances. From today on, I was the meat on her chopping block. She could bring down the butcher's knife at any time. I had to pass out the secret of the key as quickly as possible. The next day, Mama Wang's illness was gone. The way she looked at me was full of undisguised malice. She began to torment me in various ways. All the filthiest and most tiring jobs were thrown at me. She wouldn't give me food to eat, nor water to drink. At night, she punished me by making me kneel in the courtyard until dawn. She wanted to break my will, to see me collapse and beg for mercy. But I gritted my teeth and endured it all without a word. I knew the more I could endure, the more she wouldn't dare kill me easily, because she still wanted to get Xiao Qi's whereabouts out of me. I became an invisible blade. My very existence was a check on her. Using a chance while taking out garbage, I went to the latrine again. I drew the shape of a key on the wall, and next to the key, I drew a small phoenix. Mama Wang's torment turned into a silent torture. She no longer hit me, nor scolded me. She just used those venomous eyes to watch me at all times. When I served tea, she would accidentally knock over the scalding tea, letting it splash on the back of my hand. When I swept the floor, she would take a plate of sunflower seed shells and slowly scatter them over the floor I had just swept. She would even reward me with a bowl of rice, but that rice was scooped out of the spoiled slop bucket. I became her only pleasure. A plaything for her amusement, to see how I struggled in despair. I silently endured it all. If she burned my hand, I would rinse it with cold water, and continue working. If she dirted the floor, I would kneel and sweep it over and over. I would even eat the spoiled food, right in front of her, swallowing it bite by bite. My submissiveness and numbness seemed to satisfy her. The smile on her face became increasingly smug. She thought she had completely destroyed me. She thought this mouse of mine was already being toyed with in the palm of her hand. But she didn't know that with every act of endurance, my heart grew colder and harder. Finally, when I went to dump the trash, I found an opportunity. This time Uncle Zhang didn't leave me a note. Under that locust tree, he had left a broken piece of black charcoal. I picked it up. At first, I thought it was just ordinary charcoal, but I soon found the weight was wrong. It was too light. I snapped it with force. The charcoal broke in the middle. It was hollow. Inside was a scroll of paper rolled extremely thin. My heart pounded wildly. Hiding in a place where no one was, I unrolled the note. On it was still Xiaoqi's familiar, bold, and powerful handwriting. The phoenix has left the nest. The map is the priority. She must have it hidden within 3 feet of herself, in a place immune to water and fire. He knew the secret of the key, but what he valued even more was that map. The map that could find the entrance to the Eastern Palace treasury. At the end of the note was a command I hadn't expected. Stop searching for items. Strive to survive with all your might. The enemy is weakened. Make her let her guard down. Wait for my signal. I was stunned. Stop searching for items. Strive to survive with all your might. I instantly understood Xiaoqi's intention. He knew I was exposed. He also knew Mama Wang was using me as bait. So he wanted me to completely give up being a spy. He wanted me to become, in every sense, a completely terrified, useless piece of waste. Only this would make Mama Wang lower her guard. Only when I, as bait, lost all value, would she stop watching me so intently every second. And this would create an opportunity for Xiaoqi's next move. This was an open strategy, a thrilling scheme using myself as a chess piece. I took a deep breath and swallowed the note. From this moment on, my performance was to begin. Back at the cold palace, my mental state visibly collapsed. I started becoming clumsy, breaking vases, going the wrong way, and even struggling to speak clearly. When Mama Wang punished me, I no longer endured it with numbness. I began to cry and beg for mercy. I knelt on the ground, clutching her leg, like a dog truly wagging its tail for pity. Mama, I was wrong. I won't do it again. Please, have mercy on me. My tears and snot got all over her. She kicked me away in disgust, but her face wore the cruel smile, belonging only to a victor. She liked seeing me like this. It satisfied her twisted desire for control. I began a hunger strike. Not that I didn't eat at all, but I ate a little in secret where she couldn't see. In front of her, I always appeared as if I hadn't touched food or water, looking weak and pathetic. I wasted away at a visible speed. My face turned sallow. My eyes became hollow. I was like a living corpse, drained of all vitality, ready to collapse at any time. Mama Wang was very satisfied with my breakdown. She started paying less attention to me. In her eyes, this mouse had been completely broken by her play. I no longer posed any threat. Just when I felt I couldn't go on, Xiaoqi's signal arrived. That evening, in the western part of the palace, a massive fire suddenly broke out. The flames turned half the sky red. I heard eunuchs screaming as they ran, "Fire! The imperial study is on fire!" The imperial study was where the emperor handled affairs, and where confidential archives were kept. The entire palace instantly fell into massive chaos. Countless guards and eunuchs rushed toward the imperial study. Mama Wang stood in the courtyard, gazing at the towering flames, her expression turning grave and suspicious for the first time. Her attention shifted completely away from me for once. The opportunity had come. At dinner, I was given an ice-cold bun. I broke the bun open. Inside was hidden a small ball of cloth. The cloth had only one word on it: tonight. I squeezed the cloth tight in my palm. I knew this game would be decided tonight. The night felt unprecedentedly long. Though the fire at the study was quickly extinguished, the entire palace had entered the highest level of lockdown. Squads of guards with long spears patrolled the palace roads. The air was thick with the scent of burning and a grim, murderous aura. Mama Wang was restless all night. She stood under the corridor looking deep into the palace. Without a word, that face that always wore a fake smile now held only cold gravity. I knew she was waiting for news. News from the Prince of Ing. A fire in the imperial study was too big an event to be an accident. Behind it, inevitably lay the highest level of power games at court. And this was precisely part of Xiaoqi's plan. He used a fire to draw everyone's attention and disrupt the Prince of Ing and Mama Wang's rhythm. Just then, Mama Wang suddenly turned around and gave me an order. Go and clean the small Buddha hall in the back. Her voice was dry and raspy. The small Buddha hall, that was a long-abandoned side hall in the cold palace. It was said to be the place where a disgraced concubine once prayed. No one had been there for years. Why was she making me clean it so late at night? A sliver of alarm rose in my heart. but my face remained submissive, looking as timid as a mouse. "Yes, Mama," I replied, carrying a dim lantern. I walked into the depths of the cold palace. The small Buddha hall was covered in thick dust, and cobwebs hung in every corner. The air was filled with a scent of decay and rot. I held a rag, absent-mindedly wiping the dusty altar. My mind was racing over Mama Wang's intention. Was she testing me, or did she want me out of the way? As I wiped the floor in front of the Buddha statue, my finger accidentally pressed down on a tile. A very faint click of a mechanism sounded. That tile actually sank slightly. My heart leaped. I pried the tile open with force. Below was a small hidden compartment. The compartment was empty, but on the inner walls, there was a faint mark, left by a scroll stored there for a long time. I understood instantly, the map. This was where Mama Wang used to keep the map. She wasn't testing me. She felt uneasy because of the fire at the Imperial study, so she wanted to get me out of the way, so she could check this secret hiding spot. She must be nearby right now. The moment that thought crossed my mind, outside the hall, the sudden sound of clashing weapons rang out, followed by a few short, sharp screams. Assassins! Xiaoqi's people were making their move. I immediately blew out the lantern, and hid behind the giant Buddha statue. I saw several dark figures, like ghosts, rush into the courtyard. They had only one target, Mama Wang. Mama Wang's reaction was faster than I imagined. She drew a shimmering soft sword from her waist. She no longer had the posture of a maid. She became a truly bloodthirsty beast. The blade flashed. Every move was lethal. Although the men in black were skilled and coordinated well, they couldn't overcome her for the moment. I hid in the dark, my heart nearly jumping out of my throat. I understood Xiaoqi's plan. He wasn't trying to kill Mama Wang. He was trying to force her, in a life-or-death moment, to reveal the true location where she hid the map. Watching that heart-stopping slaughter in the courtyard, an idea grew wildly in my head. I had to add more fuel to the fire. I looked at the large, still burning ever-burning lamp on the altar. Gritting my teeth, I picked up that heavy bronze lamp. Using all my strength, I smashed it violently into the pile of long-decayed, dry banners and curtains in the corner. Boom! The scalding oil splashed as the flames instantly shot up. A new fire roared in the heart of the cold palace, burning right in Mama Wang's quarters. Next door, the fighting Mama Wang saw the light. Her face changed drastically. She let out an angry shriek, her sword forcing back the assassins around her. Her eyes, subconsciously flicked toward an inconspicuous dry well in the corner of the courtyard. That was it. I understood. The place immune to water and fire. The well. The map was hidden in that well. Just as Mama Wang was about to move toward the well, a man in black who had been hiding on the edge and hadn't made a move finally acted. His figure was fast as lightning, striking after but arriving first, instantly blocking the path between Mama Wang and the well. He looked up, revealing his face under the bamboo hat. It was Uncle Zhang. He wasn't an assassin at all. He was the Oriole behind the mantis. Everything before, the fighting, the fire, was all to force out Mama Wang's final trump card. Mama Wang looked at Uncle Zhang blocking her way. Despair and madness appeared on her face. She knew she had lost completely. With a shrill roar, she pulled a poison needle, shimmering with blue light from her hairline. Her target wasn't Uncle Zhang, but me, just running out of the burning Buddha hall, standing closest to her. Even in death, she wanted to take someone with her. That needle with lethal poison, under the firelight, was like a blue lightning bolt, flying straight for my face. I didn't even have time to react. I could only watch his death, magnified infinitely in my pupils. In this critical instant, Uncle Zhang's figure blocked the space in front of me. With a muffled thud, the poison needle sank into his shoulder armor. Uncle Zhang's body only swayed slightly. He didn't even look back at me. That weathered hand of his, like a steel clamp, firmly gripped Mama Wang's wrist. Crack! The crisp sound of bone breaking. Mama Wang let out a non-human scream. Her wrist was snapped by Uncle Zhang. Immediately after, Uncle Zhang delivered a heavy blow to her neck with the side of his hand. Mama Wang didn't even grunt, before collapsing limply. At the same time, the other men in black had already used ropes to pull a heavy iron box out of that dry well. They opened the box, took out what was inside, and then nodded to Uncle Zhang. Mission accomplished. Take her and retreat. Holding his rapidly blackening shoulder, he gave the command in a deep voice. One man in black shouldered the unconscious Mama Wang, while another supported the somewhat shaky Uncle Zhang. They were as silent as they had come, ready to disappear into the night. Before leaving, Uncle Zhang turned to give me a deep look. That gaze was incredibly complex. There was approval, concern, and a sense of entrustment. Then they vanished. The entire courtyard was left with only me, and that fire burning brighter and brighter. In the distance, the sound of the guards, chaotic footsteps and shouts approached. I looked at the mess on the ground, and the corpses of several unconscious assassins. I walked to the center of the courtyard, using all my strength, to take a breath of the air mixed with blood, and the smell of burning. Then my eyes rolled back, and I fell down straight. Whatever happened next had nothing to do with me. When I woke up again, I found myself lying in a clean room, changed into a clean maid's uniform. A kind-faced old maid was changing the wet towel on my forehead. "My dear, you're awake." I pretended to be shaken, looking around blankly. Where am I? This is the side hall of the laundry bureau. You were frightened. And fainted. Later, I was taken for questioning several times. My story was seamless. I was just a scared to death, lucky survivor, a low-level maid. The cold palace was attacked late at night. Manager Mama Wang fought the assassins but was unfortunately abducted. And I, because I was punished with cleaning the Buddha hall, which happened to catch fire, narrowly escaped with my life, because I was the only survivor, and indeed appeared slow and timid. No one suspected me. The incident was ultimately classified as a conflict between enemy spies, and the cold palace was completely sealed off. We, the remaining insignificant maids, were reassigned, and because I was traumatized and dazed, the eunuch in charge showed great kindness, and assigned me to the quietest place, the Imperial Garden. I was to look after the most remote and neglected medicinal herb patch. When I first stood in front of this green medicinal patch, in clean clothes, I almost thought I was dreaming. There were no cold stone walls here, no black well openings, no bamboo whips from Mama Rong, and no venomous eyes like Mama Wang's. There was sunshine, the scent of flowers, and the air of freedom. I won. Xiaoqi and I had won the first stage of this game. With a world-shaking open strategy, he not only got what he wanted, but also successfully plucked me, this chess piece, from the most dangerous board, safe and sound. A few days later, while watering a Pinellia plant, I found on a large leaf a small grasshopper woven from fresh green grass. The craftsmanship was exquisite. I picked up the grasshopper and gently opened its belly. Inside was hidden a tiny note. It was Xiaoqi's handwriting. "Uncle Zhang is fine. Wang has spoken. The bait's work is done. Go forth like a fish in the sea. Wait for the wind. Live on. Wait for my return." I looked at these few lines, and my eyes unknowingly grew moist. I looked up at the golden, towering roofs of the Forbidden City. The sunlight was a bit piercing. I knew all this was far from over. The Prince of Ing was still there, and the Emperor sitting on the dragon throne had depths of mind still unfathomable. The road ahead was still a mountain of blades and a sea of fire, but I was no longer that Wei Ning who could only cry by the well. I took the grass-woven grasshopper and the note into my palm, squeezing them tight. I am Xiaoqi's most hidden blade in this deep palace. My true story has only just begun.